All right, so this is going to be the unified approach, merging physical education and health curriculum. I am William Bodie, and there is my email. So if you have any questions, I'm a former teacher in North Carolina. I retired after 30 years of service, and so I love collaborating with teachers, love talking to them about how I can help them use our GW health and PE resources. I'm also the author of the Fitness and Wellness Skills, which is a high school, which also could be used in middle school curriculum for physical education. So I will be using a Google Doc. I found a kind of a unique way of using it. So instead of slides, we use pages. And here's our agenda for the day. We're going to do our little introduction activity at first. What are the benefits of having health and physical education as a cross-curricular approach? And so then we're going to have some examples of how we can connect health to PE. Then we're going to take a little break from the activity. We're going to look at the challenges because, it's always fun to look at the benefits, but we also want to make sure that we're looking at the challenges, making sure we know what we're getting into. Then we're going to look at the cross-curricular connection for PE to health. And then we're going to look at a cross-curricular connection, easy for me to say, right, with vocabulary. Love teaching vocabulary when I was a teacher, and we're going to look at that. So, as promised, here is the link to the doc. So the doc that I have that I'm using right now, this is a link. And the QR code, so if you're using your phone, and you have the Google app, you can just scan it. It's so Bitly now gets you a page, hit continue to destination, whether you're on a computer or a phone, and then you should be able to see this document. The Bitly, so if you're on your computer and you want to open up another tab, the Bitly here will get you there as well. I see some people are already signing in. That's awesome. And so again, this can allow you to follow along, but also if you choose, you'll be able to edit the document. And you'll see why that's going to be important as we kind of move through some of these activities. Okay. So like a good teacher, I'm going to go ahead and model what we're going to do. And then we're going to give a chance to where you can interact with me as well. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to type in the Bitly as well as or get in the code. So I do see right now we've got about 6 or 7 of you in. Perfect.
I popped the URL in the chat if anybody wants to copy and paste.
There you go. Awesome.
If you're on your computer.
There you go. I was getting ready to ask that. So this Bitly is in the chat. So if you're still working on that, you can get that from there. So here's our introduction activity. Whoops, let's get off of that. So a common health topic is stress. And so we're going to look at an activity that's in the high school health called stress balloons. And then we're going to look at an activity that is in the fitness and wellness. And so let's go ahead and jump to stress balloons. And what I'm going to do here is that you can kind of see how I'm set up. Let's see if I can move you over a little bit so you can see it on the screen. All right, so stress balloons. I'm going to open this up in a separate document so you can look at it. And so the way this activity is, and we can just go straight to the activity instructions. So I have my balloon, and I'm just going to keep on going down because I want to go to yes. Okay. Where are you at? Stress balloons. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to we would ask the kids, hey, what are some things that gives you stress? So as a teacher, I want you to think of something that gives you stress. One of the things that always stressed me out is I think, wow, I've got a planning period. And then 2 minutes in, my principal calls and say, Mr. Bodie, could you go cover and fill in the blank? like even now, after being retired, I still feel a little bit of angst. So what I want you to do, feel that stress. Let's blow you up your balloon with one big breath, though. All right. So I've got that. And then we would ask the kids, hey, what's another source of stress in your life? So as a teacher, another stress that I had was usually Sunday nights, getting ready for Monday morning, making sure that I had everything ready to go for my students the next day. That always gave me a little stress. So another puff of air into my balloon. All right, getting full. And then one more time, I'm going to go ahead and think of one more thing that stresses me out. And you know what? Standardized tests. I know that stresses the kids out. It also stressed me out a little bit because I could feel how the kids would stress, and they usually subconsciously would let it out in my classroom. So I'm going to add another puff of air. All right. So we know that if we did this in class, that sometimes they would pop, right? And so we would ask kids like, hey, before your balloon popped, are there some things you could have done to reduce your stress? And they could give you some answers. But what we now have is I have almost a full balloon. I'm not sure if you can see my picture or not, but I have almost a full balloon. And so the rest of this activity, what we would do is now ask the students, how do we cope with that stress? How can we reduce our stress when we know these things are happening? Because a lot of these things are beyond our control, but how we cope with them. And so how would we cope with having to cover a class? Well, I think I would talk to my administrator and say, hey, could you give me a little bit more notice? I know sometimes things happen, but I'd had some things planned for my planning. So communication would be one of the ways I would cope. So let's let out some air. And we all know that when you let air out of a balloon, it makes a funny noise, right? And kids are going to laugh. And that's what we want them to do, because you know what another coping mechanism is being able to laugh at our situations. So let's let some more air out. And then last, what else can we do to reduce the stress of standardized testing? Well, I'm glad you asked, because as a physical education teacher, we know that exercise is one of those ways. So, whoop, there we go. We let all the air out. And so we continue this activity and this conversation with our students is what happens when we pop, right? And that's number 5 here. And we allow the students to tell us, what behaviors happen when we just get so stressed out, we quote unquote pop. And, we're going to start maybe yelling at somebody. We could, according to the directions here, drug use, we could get emotional. As an older person, maybe we could start drinking, or it could lead to symptoms of a heart attack or a stroke. And so all of this is a great health activity, right? So very engaging. So this alone is a health activity that can be facilitated in a classroom. And so we're thinking, all right, how can we take this health activity and make it a physical education activity? A little cross curricular connection here. And so I'm going to go back to our document. And as you can see, I've already filled it in for us. And as it has, I have an activity in the fitness and wellness guild called balloon drills. And we're working on reaction time, coordination. And so I'm going to open that up for you. And you're going to kind of see the activity. In the fitness and wellness, we have about 40 to 45 cooperative activities. And as you can see, there's the activity instructions. Here's the add a challenge. And each of the fitness and wellness cooperative activities has an instructor debrief. Now, this only has one question. So what I would like to do is I'm going to change those debrief questions. I'm going to add these 3. So now it's more about stress. And so one of the activities, if you see back in here, is working with a partner to keep both balloons up in the air. And so I just happen to have a balloon that's already pumped up, or already blown up, pumped up, thinking of a basketball or a soccer ball. And so, one of our activities is we just keep the balloon up in the air, right? We keep the balloon up in the air. Now that we have a partner, we've got to alternate back and forth. Maybe we use our elbows, our head, our knee, different parts of our body. And so that can get stressful as that balloon gets towards the ground. So now when we ask these debrief questions, how stressful was it to keep those two balloons up in the air? So I'm working on coordination. I'm working on communication, but now I'm moving in the topic of stress because we just talked about it in our health classroom. I did have the fortune of being able to teach my last 10 years of teaching health and physical education. My first 20 was all PE, and I loved it. And I always was a little hesitant to teach health because I just loved the physical activity that my students got. And so when my principal came and said, "Yeah, we got to teach health," I'm like, okay. As a veteran teacher, I had classroom management abilities. I had the opportunity to have the tools at my disposal, as you would, to be able to handle that. And so I wanted to make sure that my health classes were just as engaging as my PE classes. Because to be honest, some kids really love PE and some kids really love health, and it's for varying reasons. I wanted to make sure that they got the best of both worlds. And that's what you see here. Also, what you see here is I took the shape standards for middle school and for high school to make sure that we're always making sure that we are meeting standards. We don't want to do it just because it's fun. We don't want to do it just because kids are participating. So there are the standards. We want to make sure we meet those standards. So that's the first activity. So you see how we had the health stress balloons. We took those balloons and we took them to physical education. So we're still learning about stress. We're just now in the gym. All right. So that's one example. And I told you in the fitness and wellness, we had quite a few cooperative activities. And one is called group juggle. And let's open that up for you. In group juggle, it's a common game that maybe you've played before. And we're going to go right down to the instructions. I have my class in a circle, maybe 8 to 10 kids, up to 15 kids. So if you have a large class, you could just have multiple circles. But the rule is to create a rotation, and you can't throw the ball to the person beside you, and you can't throw the ball to someone who's already caught the ball. So you create a rotation with the ball. Anytime the ball hits the ground, got to start all over from the beginning. And so we go through that with one ball. They get it. They understand it. There's a little teaching tip there when you have a chance to read it. But then round 2, we add that second ball. So first person tosses the ball in the rotation. And as we're moving through, give them the second ball. They've got to start that. So now we got 2 balls being thrown around. Round 3, we have 3. And so that is the activity. For physical education, it's about teamwork, it's about communication, and a little bit of problem solving. But if we want to move this in and make it an activity where the students have an opportunity to do this in a health classroom, and you're like, oh boy, we don't have enough space to do group juggle. So you could move your chairs, right? Move chairs out to the sides, have them right there in the middle of your classroom. You could go to the library or the cafeteria. And as I told you before, we just changed the debrief questions, right? And all the questions now become about stress. And so when I did this, when I was teaching, I would have them name each ball as a stress in their life or an event in their life. So it would be family, it would be work, it would be school, it would be friendships. And so we're juggling all of these things. And when we juggle too much, typically a ball is going to drop. And so it leads into a really good academic conversation once we're done. And so they connect the dots to stress and the activity. So the activity is really fun, but now it has a learning component. And so when you're in the health classroom, we want to make sure that we talk about stress. So let's say, okay, Mr. or Bill, we don't have that type of space. And so what I would do is option 2, I would go ahead and use a crumpled up piece of paper. And that crumpled up piece of paper now is our throwing object. It's not going to roll. It's not going to hurt anybody. I'm going to reduce the size of the group to about 4 to 6. And we're going to be just around a desk or an area within the classroom that kind of works. And so instead of creating a rotation, if everybody has a crumpled piece of paper, we're going to have them toss it to their right 10 successful times without one piece of paper hitting the ground. And then we're going to have them do it the opposite direction. And so there's different ways that we can create that combination to hopefully create a little bit of a stressful situation, right? And then we can use the same debrief questions above, all right? And again, here are the standards for middle school and high school. So you kind of see how we have created a template, and you'll see here in a minute, we're going to have our health activities that we're going to make PE activities, except it's going to be empty, and it's going to give you an opportunity to kind of think through some things and how you would do it, as well as how I would do mine as well. All right, well, let's keep moving. If there are any questions, again, put them in the chat. As you can see, we go from page to page. It's a great time to address any questions that you may have about what we're doing. But let's talk about the benefits of having your health and your PE intertwined, unified, as we've named this webinar. So one, it's just a holistic development. You know, combining these two, it's really just going to help your students have a physical and mental social well-being. It's all together. So they understand the benefits of physical activity. They understand the importance of mental and social well-being, but it's all done together. And I just really like how when I would do this in my classrooms, the interconnectivity, it also creates consistent messaging. So it's not 9 weeks of PE, 9 weeks of health. It's 18 weeks of wellness, right? We're making a statement to our kids that physical activity and health are intertwined there. So we've got that consistent messaging that allows our students to really dial in and understand that everything is connected, which inherently as teachers, we already know that, right? So next, I found that it improved engagement. I did find that most of my students who liked health and didn't like PE too much, they liked the academic portion that I added to PE. I also noticed that my kids that really like to be active in the physical education environment didn't mind health as much because I got them up and moving around my room, and it wasn't just a sit and get learning experience, which, to be honest with you, they probably get that in most of their other classrooms. I also did find it was an efficient use of time and resources. I had 18 weeks now to be able to teach the skills and teach the academic portion within my health classroom and then reinforce it in my physical education or vice versa. And then finally, it just supports lifelong healthy habits, which helps our kids a lot more than you think because, you know, and we know in school sometimes they just sit and they don't understand. They know they're supposed to. And so our kids that conform, they're going to go get that grade. The kids that don't conform may cause a little bit of a behavior challenge for us. But when students know the why behind we do things, it's a pleasurable experience for all of us. All right. So those are the benefits. So now we're ready to move on to our health to PE. And so what you're going to see here is, as I kind of scrolled through, if you would like to interact with this, this is your chance. So what I'm going to do for the next 4 activities is I'm going to open up the GW assignment. And then I'm going to show you how I would modify it for this to physical education. But if you have LinkedIn and you have hit the edit button, you also have the opportunity to edit within this document. Now, I know we only have an hour, but if you want to come back after the hour and kind of put in your thoughts, because maybe you already do something like this that would be a real benefit to the other teachers that are on this call or this webinar. So you can add that. So I'm going to show you kind of what I'm going to do. So we're talking about comparing foods. And so what I'll do is I'll open up the document. And as I open up the document, well, I'd like you to open up bigger than that. All right, fellas, let's get you over here. And we're going to open up. See if it'll do it this way. There we go. That's what I wanted. So we opened up comparing foods, and we can kind of see, you can read through the activity, but I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. I'm going straight to option 1 because that's the variation that I have. Before class begins, we're going to create 6 different signs, 1 for each nutrient, and we're going to put it around the gymnasium. Obviously, here it says classroom. And as the students, as we have the cards, so I can scroll down and you can see there's like 70 foods here that you would print out, cut out, that you would have ready for your kids. So now we've got the 6 nutrients around the gym, and I'm going to show you my answer. And I will go right in, hit Control C, come back up. And I'm going to drop it into our box. And so the exercises, I'm going to take that card with the food on it, and on the back, I'm going to add an exercise. And then how many reps is really up to you as the teacher. You can put how many reps you want on there, or you can just make it a general, hey, today with this activity, every exercise you see, we're going to do 10 reps. And you'll see that's kind of a common number that I use for my students. And so on my go, I've already split that group into 6. 1 student will run into the middle. They'll pick up a food that contains the nutrient for their station. If all of their members agree that it has that nutrient, they'll do that exercise, and then the next person will go. They'll run back, and you kind of continue to repeat. Once every student's gone through this, so let's say there's 5 kids, they've now brought back 5 foods, and they've learned that nutrient and 5 foods that go with that, and they've gotten a little exercise. They're going to bring those cards back to the middle. We're going to rotate clockwise, and now we're going to do the same thing for the next nutrient. And so kids will have an opportunity to go through all 6 nutrients and just learn about foods. And there's so many foods in it that, like I said, there's like 70. And so with that 70, unless you got like 100 kids in your class, you might want to have 2 sets. But I think you'll find that 1 set works fine. And so that would be one of the variations that I have. And I actually even went ahead, because this had a lot of variations. When you look at 4, this is now food groups. So instead of nutrients, we're looking at food groups and finding out the food groups. And so again, I'm going to drop right in here. I pre-typed all my answers because you can see I don't have time to type everything that I would do. and I'll drop that in for you. And so now we have the food groups. With the food groups, we're going to go ahead and have one of each of the food groups. Now they're going to go grab a food, bring it back. They got to agree on it, do the exercise. But now, once every student has finished, they're going to rank these from least healthy to most healthy options. So now they're having that academic conversation based upon what's healthy and what's not healthy. And I think you'll find not everybody has the same background when it comes to foods. And so having these academic conversations, you'll find will create some good secondary conversations as well. And I haven't put the standards yet, but they're right here. They're linked within the top of the document. And I would love, as we continue through, if you want to look at another document and start maybe looking through it, you can. But I am going to go through each one and make sure that we have a couple of answers already started. So if anybody wants to go, like they thought, man, I think this is how I would do a comparing foods activity, you can go ahead and put it right there under mine as we continue, or you can continue to kind of watch how I kind of go through this. So the next activity, so you notice that was a high school health nutrition. This is going to be a high school health lesson on alcohol. I've done this in PDs before, and it is alcohol attitudes. And with this, real quickly, it's just there are scenarios. As you can kind of see here, there are 10 scenarios that students will rank least negative to most negative. Like they're all going to be kind of negative statements about alcohol, and they get to rank them. And remember, our job is to make this into a movement activity. And so I'm going to move my answer right on over to the document. And there it is. And so I'm going to have those scenarios. I'm thinking about 1 per 5 students. And I had a lot of fun thinking about this one because when I would teach alcohol, I would try to put my kids in situations where they would have an impaired vision, or they had to balance. And so again, we're thinking about PE. Balance is one of the skill-related health components, right? And so I'm going to have them walk on tape to get to the scenario to bring back. I'm going to have them maybe balance a book on their head to go out and grab the scenario, come back. Maybe I grab a pair of glasses and I put Vaseline on them so they have impaired vision. And now they have to walk across the tape. Or I may have them, put their forehead on a bat and spin around 10 times so they get really dizzy. And now they kind of maybe just have them walk to the tape or walk to the scenario and back. And so now you've got a mode of transportation or a motor skill to get to the scenario, bring it back. And once they have all 10, now they're going to rank them and have that conversation with their classmates or their group. And so once you get there, have them either justify it by writing it down on a piece of paper, or you have a class discussion if you have time. And so that's alcohol attitudes, and that's how I would get them moving in the gym. The next one, we're going to go into middle school, and this is find someone who, and this is about sleep. So I want to go ahead and click into that. And as you can see, this is a kind of a mingle activity. If you're in the health classroom, they're already going to be up and moving. But now we're in the gym, and maybe we want them to move a little bit more. And I want to show you this document because it says find someone who, and it's got a bunch of scenarios here, right? And so I immediately went in. Let me get my answers here. I immediately thought of never have I ever. I'm not sure if you've done that in your classroom, but my kids really like that. It's a great icebreaker activity just to kind of get each other to know one another kind of at the beginning of class. And so never have I ever is right there. And so I'm going to have the kids in a circle, arm length apart. They can be on a poly spot or a paper plate if you don't have poly spots. Some type of marking on that lets them have a spot. And so you're going to put one kid in the middle, and obviously they don't need a spot. So take that spot up. So everybody has a spot on the outside of the circle, and you have your student in the middle. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, find someone who has ever walked in your sleep. So they're going to read the very first one. If you've ever walked in your sleep, you got to come off of your spot and find another one. And it can't be the spot to the right, can't be the spot to the left. And if you make one move off of your spot, you got to commit and you got to go. And so what happens is typically you've got plenty of people that have probably walked in their sleep. They're coming off their spots and they've got to find a new spot. And so the person in the middle paying attention, boom, they go right, because they can go to any spot and they get on a spot. You'll have a new person in the middle, and they'll read the next sleep action, and they'll say, find someone who snores in their sleep, and they'll just kind of keep going through. So it's a great way to reinforce sleep behaviors and talk about sleep, but they're moving around. And if you've done never have I ever at the beginning of your course, then they already know the setup. Now it has a health component to it, and you'll find they'll really love that. All right, we're going to keep moving. We got another health activity from middle school, and this is vaping. And so when we're talking about vaping, we have a what do you see activity. And so what do you see? And real quick, this is, think of a kind of a gallery walk approach. When you're in the classroom, you're going to have pictures of tobacco or vaping that you'll have to print out prior with a little kind of either put it on a chart paper or some bulletin board paper. And so right off the bat, I'm still thinking gallery walk, except I'm thinking now the gymnasium. And so let's go ahead and grab my answer here a little bit more. And as you can see, I went ahead and I added some of the directions from the health activity. But what we're going to do now is we've got 6 groups. At each station, I'm going to find, I know that I have 6 stations. I'm going to get 6 high intensity cardio or muscular endurance exercises. So like I'm thinking burpees, mountain climbers. And the reason why I want a high intensity cardio is because I want kids to breathe really hard, because we know vaping and tobacco use affects our lungs. It affects our heart. And so I really want to have that correlation there. And so I'm picking some pretty tough exercises that our kids can do. And we're doing failure sets. If you're not familiar with a failure set, it's exactly what it sounds like. You do one set until you can't do any more reps. And it's fun to watch. The kids are moaning and they're groaning. But some of them take it as a big challenge. And I try to make them as hard as I can, because we got some kids that are in really good shape. And you may have to stop them after a minute or two. But what we're going to do is we're going to follow the directions for the health, except so when you're at a station, I'm going to have them run through that exercise. Man, they're going to go after it as hard as they can. And then they're going to have the academic conversation, just like they would in the health classroom. And they're going to talk about everything that they know about that image. They're going to write it down on the piece of paper. And then after we give them a minute or two, which will be a nice little rest for them, right? We'll move on to the next station. I'll run them through that exercise. So take a couple of minutes, really get them huffing and puffing. They'll stop. And now they'll already see what's been written to their student or from the last group. Now it's their job to add on. And so now they're reviewing and adding some more information. So think of all the good information that the students will be able to write throughout all 6 stations. So great review for what do you see vaping for middle school health. And this can be done in high school too. All right. So you kind of see this is kind of the activity. I really hope I've maybe got your collaborative juices flowing, that you'll be able to go in and add some more if you choose, because the more the merrier. I'm not the sole keeper of knowledge, and you can go in and just underneath mine, go ahead and add some of your activities that you think. All right, so we're going to keep moving because I told you we're going to have some challenges, right? And what are those challenges? Curriculum alignment is definitely one of them. Taking the time to see how health lines up with PE and the standards for PE to line up with health. It definitely can be a little tough, but if you've worked enough with the standards, you kind of feel like, oh, I can do this here, I can do that there. It just takes you a minute to go that, but once you get started, I think it's pretty easy. So that challenge, maybe a little bit, but I think you can handle it. Teacher expertise. Like I told you before, my first 20 years of teaching, it was all PE. I felt, man, health was a little bit like, oh, can I do this? Of course I can, because I knew about mental health, nutrition. And hey, let's be honest, GW is there to help you, right? We have health curriculum. We have the fitness and wellness curriculum. We have everything for you to where you'll be able to do exactly what I'm doing and take a GW health activity and make it a physical education activity, or take one of the physical fitness and wellness activities and add it to health. So teacher expertise, we got you covered. Time constraints, I totally get this. I had 90 minutes. I had plenty of time. I had a block schedule. This was not one of my challenges. But I've had colleagues that have like, man, Bill, I only have 45-minute classes. Totally get that. And I think hopefully my solution would be, hopefully you have them for a longer period of time. Maybe you have them for 36 weeks. But I would have 2 days of health, 3 days of PE. Then the following week, I would have 3 days of health, 2 days of PE. So I'm constantly back and forth. And that was kind of my way of being able to not have time constraints as much as I possibly could. Resource limitations, I get it. But I think what I learned as I got to be more of a veteran teacher, I advocated for my program. And once my administration and my district realized, like, wow, this guy really teaches. He puts a lot of fidelity into what he's doing. I found that when I advocated for things, I got them. I got health resources. I got PE equipment. I was able to do more because they trusted me that that the money that they were investing in my program was worth it. And so I'm going to show you at the end how you can connect with an EC or myself and be able to look at some of the resources that GW has. And then student engagement. I look at this, it is a challenge because it's kind of new, right? Like, ooh, you're putting health in PE, or you're putting movement in health. You get a little bit of resistance at first, but once your students figure out, hey, this is how it's done, they'll conform. At least they did with me. And I taught at inner city Charlotte for the last 15 years of my career. And kids conform. They like structure. But we got to keep moving, folks. So we got questions, because now we got to go from PE to health. And so this is out of the fitness and wellness. So as you can kind of see, it's the same format, right? I've got 4 activities, and they're all from the fitness and wellness. And what you will notice is some of these, I loved having academic components to my physical education. So a lot of this could be done real easily in the health classroom. So I'm going to look at the calculating heart rates. We're going to open that up. And this is meant to, obviously we're moving a lot around and we're getting that exercise, but we're playing like we're using jump ropes and flag tag and speedball. Can't do that in a classroom, right? But how can we calculate our heart rates and understand intensity within a health class? Well, I got you covered. So we're going to keep on moving down, and I'm going to copy and paste this in. And since we're in a confined area, I'm just going to choose exercises where they don't have to run around and move. It's like squats, squat jumps, arm circles, a standing bicycle crunch, things that they can do right beside their chair and not have to again, run around to get their heart rate up. I do have at the very top, I'm going to go ahead and review how they get their pulse because, sometimes people forget. And so we're going to help them with that. And then as we finish up, and you use the calculating heart rates sheet, excuse me, we're going to discuss the importance of working out with the right intensity because they're going to be able to look at their heart rates and see, wow, my heart rate really changed from doing arm circles to doing star jumps, and let them see it for themselves, but then also be able to connect the dots with our conversation. So great academic conversation there. We're going to move right down to the next activity, and it's our wellness myth and fact circuit training. So again, it has a very health feel to it, but I made it into a workout because, again, I like my kids to learn while they're moving. Well, as I said before, we got a limited space. And so here's the activity preparation. So we're talking about, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to where the myths and the facts are, or the exercises are. Yep, myth and facts. All right. Here, there we go. And so I've got what looks like 6 of them. And so I have 6 that I could read. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click in and grab the answer here. Come on. And let's drop it into the activity. There we go. Well, I don't need that one. So let's take that one away. And so we've got the 3 facts and the 3 myths, and we're in a classroom, right? And so this is real simple. I'm going to have everybody line up right in the middle of the classroom and think of this or that, right? When I give them the statement, so let's say I give them one of the myths, right? That crunches will get rid of belly fat, right? So take that, and they're all in the middle, and I have one side of the room is fact, the other side of the room is myth. And so they just choose which way to go. And again, it's a real simple way to get kids up moving. Are they going to break a sweat? No, but at least they're up out of their seats for the time that we are doing this activity, and they choose. Now, some kids are going to choose one or the other. Maybe they all choose one. Have them have a brief justification. Like, why did you say this was a myth? Or why is this a fact? And if there's a split in the room, they can have a little mini debate to see if they can influence anyone from one side over to their side. Just make sure you're mindful that students speak to each other with respect, right? So, real easy way to get them moving. All right, we're moving right down. Next one is influences on decision making. I was big on, we're talking about high school kids, that frontal lobe's not completely developed. I need them to think about decision making and what influences that. So this is actually a fitness and wellness activity that I made into a relay because I'm bringing some of that health skill into the PE. Well, now I'm bringing it back, and how do I want to have some movement in here? And so let's look real fast. Here are the negative influences on decision making and the positive influence on decision making. And I've got the answer already teed up. Let's put that in. And so I told you earlier, I love gallery walks because, again, it's in the name, walk. They're going to get moving. I got those 16 scenarios all around the room, and I'm going to split up the class into at the most 16 groups. And so if I have 2 to 3, you're looking at that's for a pretty big class if you have them. I hope you don't have that big a class, but I do realize that happens. And so as they walk around, they're going to discuss whether the influence would be more positive or negative when making important decisions, and they can write it up on the sheet of paper. And then you can go into it further about making decisions, excuse me, whether it's positive or negative, and then give an example on how we make that decision or what decision we're making. So I've taken that movement activity and I brought it back to the health classroom. And then finally, I think it was always a class favorite of mine, two truths and a lie. And when I do two truths and a lie, most people know that. And yes, I did that in physical education because I needed my kids to talk to each other. And so I did it at the beginning because I needed my kids to learn how to build positive relationships. And I needed to know how they talk to each other. What's your default on how you talk to each other? This is a good way to do it. So most people know two truths and a lie, but how am I going to bring two truths and a lie into a health classroom? I'm going to keep the same, but I think if it were me and I wanted to add a little bit of movement to it, or I wanted to change it up a little bit. I don't know how much movement I could do, but I would change this to make it a review activity. And again, I could stand them up in the middle of the line and a kid would be at the front. They have two facts about relationships and one lie. And you could read out, hey, here's the fact. Like they'd read it random order, right? And they would have to choose fact or lie. And you'd have that discussion, right? You come back to the middle, they'd read the next one. Let's say it's a lie. And so they would choose. You could have that debate. And so now two truths and a lie could be a little bit of a movement activity. So I would need to amend this answer a little bit. But I got to keep going, folks, because we are getting close to time. So vocabulary. And I may not do all of these. I will put all the answers in it. But so in our middle school health, we have a bingo review activity. And it's in most of them, but this is from chapter 2. And when I click on the bingo, you're going to see that it has a bingo card. And kids put their terms in there, right? And then teacher reads out the definition. They think they get it right. They put a check and you play bingo. Well, how are we going to make this a little bit more of a movement activity? I'm going to have the kids have the same bingo card. They're still going to put their cards in it or their terms in there. But instead of just the term, they're going to put an exercise in there. And so let's say one of the terms that they put in, I think this was dealing with regular health, like mental health. It's, therapy. And so under the word therapy, they'll put their exercise, jumping jacks. And you can see that there's 10. So we're going to do exercises with each one. So every kid will have a chance to do an exercise. There'll be different exercises, but they'll put like number 1 beside therapy because that's the definition. I think they got it right. Because we want to make sure that when you check their card, they do have the right definitions with the terms. And so you'll see that I have that accounted for. And so now they're going to get a pretty good workout. You figured if there's 15, 20 terms, they're going to do 15 different exercises. And you can repeat them if you want, but they're always going to do 10 repetitions. So that's vocabulary bingo. And we're going to go to vocabulary review. So again, these are health activities that we're going to bring in to physical education to make a little bit more movement. And for this one, I love this one. When I was thinking about how I would make it PE, you have one index card with a term, one index card with the definition. Each kid gets one. And so split your class in half. And so let's say if I've got 30 kids, I've got 15 kids with definitions, 15 kids with the terms. Now, they don't know what they are, but we do need to designate them. And so I am going to play a tag game with them. I told you I love this one. And so half my class will have, let's say, a jersey on or a flag belt. And that's our kids with the terms. Or I would have half the class with like a little short pool noodle as a tagging instrument. So you'd be able to differentiate. If you have a pool noodle and you're tagging, well, you're not going to tag another person with a pool noodle because they have a term just like you have a term. But they're going to run around. I used to, like, for safety reasons, I would have everybody do a fitness walk. I just didn't trust my kids to run around without, running into each other and hurting each other. So I'd use a fitness. So we go in there, they're playing tag. Once you tag somebody, now you got to look at each other's index card and you've got to determine, are you a match? If you are, then you've got to do a yoga pose for 30 seconds. If you aren't, you got to keep on running around. And by process of elimination, everybody's going to find their match, right? Well, while they're working on that, people will start to find their matches. Once you found a match, like I said, you do a yoga pose for 30 seconds. And then once you've done your yoga pose for 30 seconds, you look for another pair and you're not playing tag anymore. You go up to them, you look at your terms and your definitions, and you figure out the connection between the two terms. Now, obviously, there's going to be some connection in some of the terms because you're all talking about the same topic, social health, for instance. And so if it's social health, then you've got to be able to come up with the connection. If you can't find a connection, you go find another pair. If you can find a connection, you now have to do a 4-person yoga pose for 30 seconds. And so you continue while the other folks are playing tag. So everybody will have a purpose as you're playing. So I think that would be kind of a fun activity to hopefully eventually everybody will see a connection to their activity. All right, alphabet challenge. Got to move a little bit faster here. Alphabet challenge. Like I said, I did this I did this in PE. That's 2 truths and a lie. That is the wrong one. So I will get that connected. Alphabet challenge is just like it sounds. Everybody has the alphabet, 1 letter for each thing that you can think of. So if you got A, and if we're talking about, let's say, fitness, well, A could be aerobic exercises, right? If you're talking about mental health, A could be for another term. And then you got B, then you got C, then you got all the way through the alphabet, and then you have numbers. And so you could spread that all around the gym and have students just run around, find an A, find the B, and tell them you can't find a side by side. And so now alphabet challenge could be within a health classroom, because I did forget that. I did that in PE. In health, again, it's a gallery walk. I use that word a lot. And then we've got vocab relays. You'll be able to read that answer. I do apologize for moving a little too fast, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Vocabulary relay, how do we do vocabulary kind of in a relay fashion in the health classroom? Got you an answer here. Most of you will figure out. I'm going to do a gallery walk because we are in a limited space. But how we would do that is 2 or 3. The definitions would be up on the wall with a number, and they would go around. For organization standpoint, I would rotate them. So we start at station, everybody would start at a term. They would write down what they think the term is and the number associated with that definition. And then they would rotate and rotate. And at the end, you can have them double check and see who had the most answers as you review. So, that's a lot, folks. But I hope that you see all the resources that are available. And it's starting to get the kind of the collaborative juices flowing, like, wow, I could do this with that lesson, and I can do that with that lesson. But I did want to make things a little easy for you. I put all the documents that are throughout our webinar today in a document folder that you should have access to. If you don't, just email me. I'll pop that back up there. But you'll be able to copy that bit.ly in, go in and grab all those documents. So they're all in a nice little tidy folder for you on your Google Drive. And I wouldn't keep that there just a second. But if you all have if you're all able to get to this document, you'll be able to get there as well. So I do want to close. We have some really incredible resources in our health, in our fitness and wellness, and they were written by former teachers of the year at the district and the national level for SHAPE. And these are tried and true activities that have been done in classrooms. They will seamlessly integrate into your Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology. We support teachers throughout their contract. We've got Spanish, we've got assessments. We try to think of everything a teacher would need. And so if this is something that like, wow, really appreciate this webinar, I'd like to advocate for my students to have the resources to really benefit them throughout their lives. You can connect with a GW educational consultant, and here's the website, and you just put in the state that you live in, and it'll give you the EC that you can connect with. Or what you can do, if you like, you can go to our website too as well and check. But I'm going to open this up. I love that a Google Doc could do this, but if we come back to the very top, you can email me. There is my email, wbode@g-w.com. If there are any questions that I can answer for you about this webinar, would love to do that for you.